I was born Salvatore Gravano on March 12, 1945, in the Bensonhurst section of Brooklyn, New York. My upbringing was humble. My father, Philip, worked odd jobs, and my mother, also Salvatore's mother, held the household together. I grew up around poverty, rough streets, and an early exposure to violence and gangs. As a boy, I shoved aside pride, grit, and survival instinct to carve a path in the underworld. By age 10, local toughs had already pegged me as someone not easy to push around. One oft-told story is that when bullies stole my bike, I challenged them, fought back, and in doing so earned the nickname, Bull, a small kid fighting bigger ones. That moniker would stick. Brooklyn in the 1950s was a hard place. Neighborhoods were controlled by local gangs, petty thugs, and occasional mob influence. I drifted toward petty crime, shoplifting, small-time assaults, street fights. Along the way, I met people tied to the mafia. Rule by fear, loyalty, and violence fascinated me. I was drawn not just to the power, but to the certainty that comes when you control some fear in a community. Over time, I connected with associates of the powerful Gambino crime family. By the late 1960s and early 1970s, I had become a made man, officially inducted into organized crime circles. The Gambino family was one of the 5 families of the New York Mafia. At that time, Carlo Gambino was the boss, and the family undertook both traditional rackets, gambling, loan sharking, extortion, and more modern ones like construction, waste disposal, trucking. Bosses sought to diversify away from street-level trading. During those years, I got involved in the construction business with my brother-in-law, Edward Garofalo, investing in drywall and plumbing. The business side gave a cover, legitimacy, and higher profits, and it gave me credibility inside the family as a big earner. With deeper money, no one thought of me as just muscle. In the early 1980s, the Gambino family, like other families, faced internal turbulence. In Philadelphia, the longtime boss Angelo Bruno was assassinated in 1980 by people acting without commission approval. Such moves threatened mafia order. The commission, the governing body among families, demanded discipline. When Antonio, Tony Bananas, Capo Negro and others plotted without approval, they were ordered killed. The job fell partly on me to help assure the commission's will was upheld. When John Gotti and his associates conspired to eliminate Paul Castellano in December 1985, I played a key role. Castellano represented the old guard, favors to contractors, domination of construction, controlling city contracts. Gotti and I, along with others, decided he had too much power, too little street respect, and was vulnerable. On December 16, 1985, Castellano was gunned down outside Sparks Steakhouse in Manhattan. The hit was brazen, high-profile, and sent a loud message. After Castellano's death, Gotti rose to become boss, and I would shortly be appointed underboss. As underboss under Gotti's regime, I was second in command. I took on oversight of many operations, the daily discipline, enforcement, internal disputes, payouts, and also, hits, when necessary. It was a position of power and danger. With Gotti as the face, I was the muscle behind many of his decisions. But power brings enemies, internal fractures, and endless scrutiny. Through the late 1980s, our operations continued: loan sharking, extortion, rackets, gambling, hijacking, construction kickbacks. I earned millions, built a large estate in Cream Ridge, New Jersey, and acquired racehorses. I also operated a discotheque in Brooklyn called the Plaza Suite. The money flowed. But so did tension, from law enforcement investigations, rival factions, internal distrust. In the criminal world, you always balance profit, risk, and loyalty. I handled internal conflicts, settled disputes people tried to escalate, and cleaned up botched jobs. But within those years, Gotti and I began drifting in trust. Gotti craved media attention, flouted protocol, he attracted law enforcement attention. I, as underboss, had to manage the fallout. By 1990, Gotti, Licasio, his consigliere, and I were indicted on racketeering, conspiracy, and murder charges. The case was enormous. Prosecutors accused us of running wide-ranging criminal enterprise. In the spring of 1991, I was arrested with Gotti and Licasio. The legal pressure mounted. Behind closed doors, I faced a fateful decision: To continue insisting on silence and risk dying in prison, or flip, cooperate with the government, and walk out alive, perhaps with reduced sentencing, but at the cost of my mafia oath. The oath against snitching, Omerta, was sacred. To break it was the ultimate crime in those circles. But with the weight of evidence, mounting pressure, and the desire to live, I chose to cooperate. I agreed to testify against Gotti, against dozens of other mobsters. I admitted involvement in 19 murders. I exposed internal schemes, bribery, trial fixing, the machinations behind Gotti's, Teflon Don, aura. My testimony crushed the case. In 1992, Gotti and Locascio were convicted of racketeering and murder and sentenced to life without parole. My cooperation spared me the worst. I was sentenced to 5 years, though I had admitted to far greater crimes. From prison, I entered the Federal Witness Protection Program, relocated to Arizona, lived under supervision. In witness protection, life changed drastically. I had to forsake my identity, live modestly, avoid contacts. But I never entirely shed who I was. The streets are in your blood. Over the years, I gave several interviews, spoke about my life, about betrayal and regret. But I also made enemies. Many in the mafia considered me the ultimate traitor. After one 1999 Vanity Fair interview, the Gambino family allegedly put out a contract to kill me, by landmine, or rifle from afar. But I survived. The path after protection was uneasy. In the late 1990s and early 2000s, I attempted to return to crime, specifically drugs, in Arizona. In 2002, I was indicted along with my son Gerard on ecstasy distribution charges. I was convicted, sentenced to 20 years, parallel terms in New York and Arizona to be served concurrently. I ended up behind bars again. I served a long stretch. In 2017, I was released from prison after good behavior and time served. I emerged into a life full of caution, scrutiny, and old demons. The mafia still lurks in shadows. I remain a marked man in some quarters. The life of crime had given me wealth, power, and influence, but also betrayal, fear, loss, and years stolen behind walls. Looking back, I reflect on loyalty, betrayal, power, and the cost of ambition. I lost many friends, family relationships were strained, lives were ended. The oath I broke, the life I left, the violence I embraced, all these shaped me. Even now, people ask, do I regret cooperating? Do I regret the blood on my hands? Some days, guilt is heavy, other days, survival weighs more. Once you live a life where every handshake may hide a knife, trust is rare. I was both executioner and protector, builder and destroyer. I betrayed the system I helped uphold. But I chose survival over martyrdom. So here I stand, out of prison, exposed to public gaze, telling my story. From Brooklyn kid to gangster to state witness to convict to free man again. My scars are deep, my name is notorious. I am Samson, the Bull, Gravano, once underboss of the Gambino crime family, now haunted by my choices, defined by my downfall, forced to live in the space between sinner and survival. That is the story of how I rose, fell, and lived beyond the crime. A life built on power, violence, deception, and betrayal, and ultimately reshaped by confession.